What is up, degenerates? I am back. I know, after like a year of not being here, I'm finally back. What? Alright. Today's episode, we are going to be working on Dr. Manhattan. Yes, I know, coming back. I'm working on Watchmen characters. I have a bunch of stuff planned. I know I keep saying that. But, yes, Watchmen characters. So, not much to introduce. So, let's get to it.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
Dr. Manhattan. Real name, Johnathan Jon Osterman. Main alias, Dr. Manhattan. Relatives, Ede Osterman. Mother, deceased. Joseph Osterman. Father, deceased. Clark Dreberg, adoptive son. Affiliation, formerly U.S. government. Crime Busters, Gala Flats. Base of operations, Mars, formerly Prime Earth, New York. Gender, male. Height, 6'5". Weight, variable. Eyes, white, blue. Hair, no hair, brown. Skin, blue, Caucasian. Early years. Johnathan Jon Osterman was born in 1929 Germany to Jewish watchmaker Joseph Osterman and his wife Eames. When John was 9 years old, Hitler's men began weeding out Jews, chasing his parents out of the country. On the way out, however, John witnessed his mother being shot. As a child in America, he planned to follow in his father's footsteps and practice digitally on one of his father's watches. He was 16 when the United States dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. Confronted with the undeniable facts of the theory of relativity, Joseph declared his profession outdated and threw the parts of the watch that John was working on out the window. He urged his son to instead pursue a career studying nuclear physics. Osterman attended Princeton University from 1948 to 1958 and graduated with a PhD in atomic physics. In early 1959, he moved to a research base at Gila Flats, where experiments were performed concerning the intrinsic fields of physical objects which, if tampered with, resulted in disintegration. There he met Janie Slater, a fellow researcher, and they eventually became lovers.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
In August 1959, shortly after his 30th birthday, John planned to give Janie her repaired watch, only to discover he had left it in his lab coat. He remembered that he had left the coat inside the test chamber where they conducted the intrinsic field experiments. While he was inside the chamber receiving it, the door closed, automatically locking as a safety feature. Unable to open the door or override the countdown, his colleagues, save for Jenny, who could not bear to see his last moments, could only watch in horror as John had his intrinsic field removed. Bathed in radiant light, he was torn to pieces by the force of the generator. Instantly, he was vaporized and was officially declared dead. Over the following months, John's consciousness began to progressively attempt to retake his material form. This progression took the form of a partial bodily reappearances. First as a disemboweled nervous system, including the brain and eyes, and as a circulatory system, and later as a partially muscled skeleton. Each time, the appearance only lasted for a few seconds. Finally, he fully appeared on November 22nd as a tall, hairless, naked, blue-skinned man. After his transformation, John began to experience time as a non-linear quantum fashion, was aware in experiencing all the moments of his life simultaneously. He was not optimistic, as he remained reliant on his intellect and sensory experiences to reach conclusions, but his range of sensory data had been abruptly extended. This was proportion to a lessening of his emotional capacitities. This often led him to arrive at conclusions greatly different from those available to normal humans. He had increasingly difficulty acting in what those around him considered the present moment, leading to many accusations and even the public perception that he was emotionless and uninterested in human affairs. He did nothing to prevent the assassination of John F. Kennedy, even though he was aware it was going to happen when he met the president. His lack of sentiment was more of a matter of radically altered priorities owing to the colossal unbridged gap of perception between him and the rest of humanity. He gradually became a pawn of the United States government. He was given the codename Dr. Manhattan as a reference to the Manhattan Project, the wartime research project that he developed the atomic bomb. He begrudgingly accepted the costume, a one-piece bodysuit, and a skull cap that they provided. But he refused to use the symbol they put on the skull cap as his emblem, instead choosing a representation of the hydrogen atom. Discharging the headpiece and etching the mark on his forehead, he declared that simplicity of the atomic nucleus was a single electron in orbit, was something that kindled his respect. As years passed, he slowly reduced the size of the bodysuit until by the end of the 1970s he refused to wear anything at all, except for mandatory public appearances. However, his presence still succeeded in tipping the balance of the Cold War in the West's favor, and the United States consequently became more aggressive and adventurous. His abilities also radically altered the world economy, as he could, for example, synthesize the amount of lithium required for all motor vehicles to become electric. At the request of President Richard Nixon, he brought America victory in the Vietnam War within 3 months. This victory distorted the American political process as the 22nd Amendment was repealed and Nixon repeatedly re-elected.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
During the first meeting of the crime busters, Laurie Jupiter, the second Silk Spectre, caught his eye. His relationship with Janie Slater ended acrimoniously shortly thereafter, and he then began dating Laurie. During the execution of Adrian Veidt's plot to save the world, John was accused of having given cancer to those who were exposed to him over long periods of time. It emerged that this was untrue and that it was actually a carefully fabrication of Veidt's to cause Dr. Manhattan to exile himself to Mars. Eventually, he brought Laurie there, where they argued over the fate of the human race. As they traveled above Mars in his floating glass fortress, he explained his beliefs that life was an overrated phenomenon, citing the barren of planet as an example of natural, undescribed beauty. Laurie tried to convince him otherwise, but he was not persuaded. Angered at his indifferences to Earth's well-being, she demanded he send her home to die with the others. He told her that, while she always asked him to see things through the human viewpoint, she had never attempted to see things through his eyes. While attempting this, as he allowed her to perceive her entire life all at one time, she realized her father was Edward Blake. As she wept over this epiphany, John explained that he spent his time trying to define what he can consider a miracle, but neglected to see anything of the sort in human coupling. The odds against two people like her mother and the comedian coming together to create a child like her, he believed, was the same as turning air into gold. With this revelation, his interest in humanity was restored, and he returned them to Earth to stop Veidt's plans. They arrived too late, however, as Manhattan had already been destroyed by the physical shockwave from the squid monster. The Veidt teleported to the city. His perception of the future was being blocked by telecom particles, but he was able to locate the source, Veidt's Antarctic lair. Teleporting there, he began to feel more distorted as he drew closer to the Teclon layer's source. He confronted Vite, who tried to run from him, stalling him from Babastus. Vite threw the switch on in the intranetic field disruptor, blowing both his pet and Jon apart. Vite's victory seemed certain, but Jon materialized outside as a giant, asking Vite if he actually expected something that could not kill Jon Osterman, could kill Dr. Manhattan. Before he could kill Vite, however, Vite turned on his wall of televisions in order to show Jon that all his countries in the world, including the United States and Soviet Union, had ceased conflict. They were doing this in order to try and understand the alien attack on New York. Seeing that his plan had brought about the genuine world peace, Jon agreed with the others, aside from Rorschach, that going public with Vite's plan was counterproductive. Jon confronted that deviant Rorschach, warning him that he could not let him reveal the truth. In tears, Rorschach removed his mask, screaming at Jon to do what he must done. He obliged by killing Rorschach. Returning to Karnak, he saw Dan Drailberg and Lori together, happy that they had found each other. He appeared before Vite, informing him that he was leaving for another galaxy. In reality, Jon decided to broaden his range of exploration and travel to a completely different universe.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
Jon observed the Flash as he attempted to restore his own universe and undo the temporal distortion caused by the Flashpoint. Influenced by great darkness, Jon interfered with this by erasing 10 years of the restored universe's timeline, and effect creating a new reality.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
As part of the Great Darkness attempts to deal with what is considered its real enemy, the superheroes of Earth-Zero curse Jon with the tax of stealing time from the Prime Universe to weaken them. The end result caused residents of Earth-Zero to become 10 years younger and to lose much of their past. Over time, Jon continued to observe and experiment with this universe. He rescued Jor-El from the destruction of Krypton, setting him up with the identity of Mr. Oz to watch his son's life on Earth. Jon's interest was for Jor-El to reconsider his decision to send Kal-El to Earth. After Owlman escaped with the Morbius chair to the moon, he and Metron used it to power and learn secrets of the universe, only to be incinerated by Manhattan after discovering his meddling with the timeline. Jon then imbued the Morbius chair with a portion of his power.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
When the comedian's button appeared in the Batcave after Wally West returned to the timeline, Reverse Flash attacked Batman in the cave and took the button, using it as a beacon. The Reverse Flash set out through the timeline to find its owner. After finally tracing it to a location, he sensed Jon's power upon arriving, demanding him to reveal himself. Jon did so, frightening Reverse Flash to the point of begging for his life. Jon then partially incinerated Thawne and transported him back to the Batcave with half of his body reduced to burnt muscle and bone. Just before dying, Thawne explained that he saw God. Jon then retrieved the button from the ground where it had fallen.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
Within years after Jon's departure from his world, it had become pure chaos. Vite became desperate and attempted to find Jon, believing only he can bring back to the world. To this end, Vite used quantum tunneling to follow Jon into the Flash's universe. After arriving, he discovered that Jon had teleported Eddie Blake to his universe just before he had died at Vite's hand in their home reality. Jon is summoned by Vite. He reveals the reason he spared Mime and Marionette was because their second child did something to impress him, only to reveal Vite was lying about having cancer. Before leaving for Mars, it was revealed that the reason he came to Prime Earth It's because he saw an enraged Superman punch him and saw nothing happen afterwards. He believes Superman killed him or he destroys everything. The energy that caused Firestorm's explosion in Moscow matched that of Dr. Manhattan, which the Justice League traced to Mars. When multiple heroes from Earth, along with Firestorm, arrive, he has Martian Manhunter broadcast his vision of the future where he destroys Superman or is destroyed himself. The heroes attack him, but he doesn't see them as a threat. Instead of inquiring about the unusual properties of their universe, such as the lanterns, rings, and magics. To undetermine Firestorm, Jon shows Ronnie and Professor Stein meaningfully fuse them together in that explosion. Captain Atom attempts to destroy Jon by unleashing his full power, but Jon rebuilds him and completely knocks out every hero. It was later revealed that Jon had been on Prime Earth far longer than anyone suspected. He watched as the world seemingly adjusted, changing everything around him, and all of it seemingly centered around Superman. Out of curiosity, Jon messed with history, preventing Alan Scott from maintaining his Green Lantern battery and allowing him to die. This created a timeline where the superheroes came to existence much later, as the Justice Society of America never existed. He turned Superman into a more alien figure, however, he became haunted by the visions of his fated encounter with Superman. As Superman went to confront Black Adam and his entourage at the White House, Jon waited for Superman to arrive, watching as Superman crashed in front of him. Wright reveals to Saturn Girl that Jon had revealed to him the real reason he didn't kill Mime and Marionette, because he knew that their son will grow up to bring joy to a woman who was very important to him in the past. This was the reason Veidt had the two broken out of prison again. He realized that Jon had come to the universe to be with those similar to him, the superheroes of whom there were many in this universe. He asked Jon for help, but he refused as he thought either Superman will destroy him or he will destroy the universe. As a result, Veidt made a new plan to save both universes by making sure the League was incapacitated and Jon would confront Superman alone. Osterman warned Superman that either he will destroy him or he will destroy everything. The potential showdown, however, was interrupted by a fight between metahumans from various countries. Meanwhile, Superman's wife, Lois Lane, was shown by Lex Luthor the exact same picture of Dr. Manhattan with Janie Slater that they have left throughout various time periods, telling her to expose it to the world that someone had altered their timeline in the past. Meanwhile, when Superman questions Jon why he isn't helping, he states he's seen the future where he won't. Questioned again, he reveals how his own world was destroyed after an opportunity at peace. Jon reveals to Superman that he altered the past, causing his parents to die and erasing people he once knew merely out of curiosity. He then tells him to make a choice between destroying him or being destroyed, telling him that he can't see the future beyond it. Superman, however, chooses to protect them from Solar's attack when questioned by him. Clark responds that there's been a third choice. Seeing so many pictures of him and Janie he had created, Clark realizing she must have been important to him. Superman then tells Jon that maybe he can't see the future because he might have give everything up to save the world and he can choose it. Inspired by his words, Jon decides to undo his alterations by moving the Green Lantern back to Alan Scott's reach. This restores the JSA. The JSA, in turn, inspires a young Clark to also become Superboy, which also inspired the Legion of Superheroes and ensured the survival of his parents. Jon also finds that every time the metaverse is altered, the multiverse is expanded to preserve every world where Superman lived. Also sees the future and the forthcoming crisis as well as alterations to his timeline. Realizing in the end that Superman will always guide mankind, Manhattan then summons Veidt, the comedian, the Mime, and Marionette to himself. He leaves Mime and Marionette on Prime Earth, assuring they'll see their son again before leaving for 1954, where he encourages Carver Coleman to come out as gay. Jon's actions result in the JSA and Legion of Superheroes coming to Superman's rescue while also stopping the metahuman battle. Lois, meanwhile, is able to expose the truth of Firestorm's explosion because of Veidt. He then travels back to his world into 1992, where Veidt's plan has been exposed and had led to a nuclear holocaust. He then travels back in time to stop the missiles, making all nuclear weapons on Earth disappear before taking away Mime, Marionette's son. Realizing that he himself was the reason why he couldn't figure out the child's future completely, he raises him as his own and names him Clark in honor of Superman. He showed him what it means to be a true hero. After Clark grows up into a young kid, Jon shifts his consciousness to look to a timeline where Janie conceived him to continue enjoying lunch, not to bother to retrieve her watch. As a result, he's never transformed, and he and Janie marry 6 months later and start a family. Smiling, Jon remarks it was a nice daydream to exist in. He tells Clark to find Danielle and Lori Dreberg, the former Night Owl and Silk Spectre respectively, so he would be loved and will give it back. Now that Superman had inspired him, he regretted that he couldn't be the hero people needed it, transforming what remains of his powers to Clark so he would become a true hero of their Earth and before him cease to exist.
Oh, the times they are a-changing.
It was later revealed that Dr. Manhattan tried to fix the fractures of the multiverse, which were residuals of every previous crisis, by using his positive connective energy, but his actions were not enough to cure the reality. The leftovers of his energy were gathered by the quintessence and gifted to the Justice League to fight one last time the mother of the multiverse, Peppertinia. Not long after, Tempest Fugonaut let Wally West adore the last remains of Dr. Manhattan's power within the Mobius chair, allowing him to become an almighty being, like Jon Osterman originally was. West tried to finish Jon's reality fixing, but failed because of the Batman Who Laughs actions. The Dark Batman managed to capture Flash and later get his Omnipoint power for himself, which combined with the Crisis energies from the Dark Multiverse in order to become the Darkest Knight. After the unknotting of the timeline and rebirth of the multiverse, Dr. Manhattan's reality manipulations became public knowledge. During a conversation with Camera Chase, Mr. Bones stated to know that Manhattan, which he referred to as a super god, came to Earth Zero and changed realities before.
Oh, the times they are